Annihilation gnosis, a concept developed in and around chaos magic, whereby you bring yourself to the point of death or to death in order to create manifest the changes in the material world. Now, this operates in two functions, and it also was used in Thelema prior to that. This would be the point of inducing pain and suffering in order to focus your charge or your will towards the objective. So therefore, tying your hands behind your back, holding a hand upon a candle flame, and at the point of excruciating pain, charging or describing, shouting, evoking your desires at that moment. It's sort of like sacrifice, but you are the sacrifice rather than you're sacrificing something else. Now, it's very, very powerful because the nervous system, because you're able to shut off the conscious mind that is totally controlled and geared towards the pain that's suffering, and the moment of release when you take your hand away and you associate relief with the escape, the nervous system sends out a formidable blast through the field. And that's why annihilation gnosis has such powerful results when used in magic. But it could also be annihilation gnosis in the absolute truest sense. The concept of a martyr or someone dying for a cause is annihilation gnosis. When the 1916 uprising happened in Ireland, a lot of that was run by occultists operating out of Golden Dawn and out of theatrical circuits. That's why that was called the Artist Revolution. A lot of people were involved in that and knew exactly what they were taking part in, a magical performance art involving warfare. And when the leaders of the revolution were being executed by the British, they didn't care. They were saying things like, well, we've won. You shoot us, we've won. And excuse me. You shoot us, we've won, and it will change the public perception. And sure enough, the British started shooting them. And by the end of the week, people who were either on the fence or anti the uprising suddenly saw them as heroes and had swung it around and began the War of Independence. And so that was, Patrick Pearse, he was a poet and an artist, and they were all connected on the fringes, or knew people, or connected to, or probably even took part in Golden Dawn ceremonies. And they knew by destroying themselves that they would get what they wanted. And they all did. It was the most remarkable thing. And the British actually stopped the executions because the actual spell was working, and the public were turning against the British en masse, when before they were on the fence about it. And if you look at my Occult Dublin film, you'll see about Sean Connolly, the first rebel to die hoisting the flag, how he actually lived the moment of his own annihilation on stage as an actor in a play called Under This Flag. It's incredible, the things that have gone on. Now, you would have that all the time. You would have, people sacrificing themselves in order for fame. I mean, we remember stars who died young and beautiful, like Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield and James Dean and all those types, and they're forever beautiful and they're forever young. And this is also, Rudolph Valentino being a classic example of that. The godhood was, the annihilation guaranteed the godhood, but also guaranteed the continuation of the work. This is not, why is this appeal to people? I think because it goes back to our pagan roots, and I'm going to bring Christianity into this as well. Within our pagan roots, particularly in the Celtic pagan world, people didn't fear death because they understood the magical charge of it. They understood the power of it, and this is why the Romans had terrible trouble with the Gauls and the Druids, because they'd be looking forward to dying on the battlefield. It was great, and the old joke, the crack we had the day we died for Ireland. This is literally how they thought, and war was fun for them. But they also knew that the magic would be songs sung about them and poems told about their bravery and legends told about them that would echo through the tribe for generations to come, inspiring a sense of identity that no one could shake off. No one could shake off. And you see it with Cleopatra even. Now, the most prime example of it all is probably Jesus Christ. The way Christians say that Jesus Christ's death on the cross, it ended all sacrifice. Sacrifice was no longer needed. That's because the annihilation gnosis was to destroy the pagan concept of a magical death, a demise, a sorcery demise, and this was the idea that you don't have to do this anymore because this guy died and suffered on a cross. And that was, ironically, in terms of a magician or a wizard using magic, Jesus Christ probably didn't exist, but whatever he's based on, the legend was about annihilation gnosis, that this guy destroyed himself so a line could be drawn under all paganism and even Judaism, traditional Judaism, and this second temple rabbinical Judaism, which later they called Christianity, was the new start, was the new playing field. And it began with the annihilation of the old through the death and suffering. And this was, this just shows you that they knew about, they knew about magic too, these people, that people would concentrate on the suffering of Christ. You see those statues around the place, like the Pieta by Michelangelo, and you see copies of that everywhere. The mother holding her son. You have so many, like even the way Mel Gibson used it in his film about Jesus being Jesus Christ. This spell is eternal, and your soul has been saved. And this idea that you're now getting into heaven. Excuse me. This is the ultimate annihilation gnosis spell because it's carrying on forever. It's carried on to this day, and it's been so powerful. And it was wrong. It was a wrong thing to do because it took away people's own ability to sacrifice for themselves. Because when you sacrifice, you're giving away, like when they said the end of all sacrifice really meant the beginning of all prayer. And prayer is like welfare. Prayer is like lobbying Jehovah to give you something. That's what prayer is. It's a lobbying thing. And it's like welfare, where sacrifice is you give something in order to get something. So therefore, if you had a bunch of money, extra money, you give some away to the poor, so as you may be granted favors with the exchange of energy. So if you were a martyr fighting for your people and you died bravely on the battlefield, you gave your life so your people would have a legendary hero who died swinging the sword to give them hope, comfort, security when they're entering into their darkest hours again in the future. There's an army marching towards us, but yet we are the people of what's-his-name who stood on that field. In Ireland, the Cuchulainn thing is very central to that. Cuchulainn is a very magical figure. And his death of strapping himself with his own entrails to a stone in County Louth, while the Morrigan landed on his shoulders. And that's why, even to this day, Irish soldiers, they invoke the Cuchulainn myth, particularly in Ulster. That's a very big thing there, because he was from Ulster, and the Cuchulainn sacrificed himself, the greatest warrior, so the the Queen Maeve and King Ale from Connacht could not get the, not defeat them in battle, as in the time by Cruige, the epic. And you get that in cultures all over the world. This is part of the magic of warfare. The hero is not just someone who dies as an inspiration, but it's someone who's creating a magical charge. And that's why, although Jesus Christ is not associated with a heroic way, he is very much tapping into things that you would have had, like Ulysses in Homer's The Iliad, and so on. Even the Greek stories, the classical stories of great heroes. He was the end of their sacrifice, and you were to replace him with him, the ultimate annihilation gnosis. This is the key to accessing states of consciousness that extend beyond you. For example, and beyond death, it's a form of immortality. The reason why Jesus was resurrected, he wasn't resurrected physically, he was resurrected in the consciousness of human beings. As in the same way, the Cuchulainn, he was resurrected in the consciousness of human beings, not as a physical being, where that lasts forever. And every culture has these annihilation magicians, warriors who die in battle against all the odds. And even if they've lost, they've won because they've inspired future generations to the cause. Incredible stuff when you start really thinking about it. This is and our society today does not have that, and this was weird. There was even stories in World War II where people would read about a young American guy or a young German guy or a young English guy who fought to the last bullet. And that all stopped in recent times. And that's because the establishment are now seeing themselves as being beyond human. They've been wanting to go into the machine to annihilate themselves as a physical human and then rebuild themselves again as software or a soul or whatever they want, a consciousness with inside a machine, be it a quantum computer, a robot or something. So they've discarded the whole idea of annihilation gnosis for the better and the great of the tribe, and it's now annihilation gnosis for the better and the great of themselves as individuals. So you have this transubstantiation of the techno-Christ within the likes of all of them. All these, you read about them all the time, all these IT, these Silicon Valley billionaires who are all buying, even went back as far as, what's his name, Walt Disney have his head preserved in case they developed a way to bring brains back from the dead and this kind of thing. And billionaires they preserve their bodies, they preserve their brains. So when they die, eventually when the technology comes along, but they're missing the one fundamental point, of course, is that the human consciousness is not in the brain. And this is why their robot minds are not capable of understanding truly, because they're the ultimate NPCs. They're truly, you look at someone like Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, there's a fundamental lack of humanity there. They're like robots, and these are people who they want to move into the machine because they've never really fully lived as humans. The only time they've truly experienced anything towards that level was when their mothers gave them birth, which is a form of annihilation. A mother has to kind of die in order for it, not literally, but she has to go through tremendous pain and suffering in order to bring a child into the world. They want to, in their minds, it's all about the techno-Christ, the techno-salvation, the judgment day of the quantum mainframe. There is a real insight into their minds and how they think when you start really analysing all this, and what they're really saying is we're not fully human ourselves. We're not fully here. But we've been inspired by the whole Messiah thing to have everlasting life inside a machine. The new heaven is the machine. But because of their class system and their money, it's an exclusive afterlife. Just like they had purgatory for the poor in the past and unbaptized babies, they now have this. And you have an awful lot of fools out there in the atheist and the scientism community who think that this technology, when it's developed, and you see even some TV shows like Black Mirror, that everyone who wants to be preserved forever as a software program will get it. No, you won't be. This is only for the elite, but ultimately there'll be nothing for them. Nothing, because they don't fully understand the nature of human consciousness. None of them will understand that. The days of, you cannot sit down someone like Bill Gates and say, well, how you are, Bill Gates, now, and what you want is just one of numerous quantum probabilities. And this is the probability that your consciousness is now chosen. You could choose any other quantum probability and find yourself within that. And he'd be like, what? And you could say, look, here are the greatest quantum physicists in the world, and they're explaining it to you too. And you go, yes, that's very interesting, but I want my consciousness to go into the machine, so that means my brain has to go into the machine. They're robots already. But there's a great comfort for the future in all this. I think, I was talking to a friend today, and he just for his joke, he said, I'm now living in the post-apocalyptic world. And I said, that's pretty funny, because that's what Crowley said. Any act of conscious thought is a magical act. And he looks better and seems happier and chirper. And he was like a little bit of the kind of doomsday, the world is screwed, a little bit kind of thing going on. And now he's like very excited. Now he's laughing and joking. I'm in the post-apocalyptic world. The apocalypse already happened. I'm in the post, where there's a lot more stuff for everybody and things are just much, much better. He's created a conscious intention to go beyond doom, to move beyond it. And then I said to him, well, the reason why you had this to begin with is because the Christian programming of the end times, apocalypse, book of Revelations, if you look at other cultures, you don't have that. You have a secular event. Yes, you have Ragnarok, but it returns back. The plane of Vigrid rises up again. Maybe the end of the Aesir gods, but it's the beginning of the new world. It comes back up again. It recycles itself. You have the yugas in Hinduism. You have the Bactuns in the Mayan thing. They recycle themselves. And it's just like when the Mayan thing was happening in 2012, people were saying it's the end of the world. They were pouring a Christian consciousness into a pagan system. No, it means a new cycle of consciousness. It's not Judgment Day. And of course, New Age, the whole New Age thing is because it was founded by the likes of the Theosophists. It was Christianity 2.0. But there's, they failed to see that. But it was very heartening to see my friend now say that I'm in a post-apocalyptic mindset. In his mind, he's already begun the cycle. Already begun it. With Christianity, it ended. Both the concept of all sacrifice, which is not killing people, ending with the death of Jesus, and secondly, everything ending with the apocalypse and the book of Revelations and the rapture. All ending, all over. And that comes from Judaism. The Jews don't have a belief, well, what became Judaism, Talmudic Judaism, that there's anything beyond this life. Where the pagans said, you just start again. The trees grow again, the plants grow again, the animals come back after a fire or whatever, a disaster. And that's what the human consciousness comes back again. And my friend was actually now in that state. he's now feeling better about things. Even though he's read, he knows about me, he knows my stuff, and he's read books he loves like the likes of Rupert Sheldrake's books and everything. But it's the first time I've actually seen him functioning with a magical intention, in that he's visualizing a better future that is beyond the impending sense of annihilation that is programmed in Western society as a result of the Book of Revelations. The ultimate annihilation gnosis, the annihilations of the human state. And so that's something you should all keep in mind, that if you're performing an annihilation gnosis as a spell or a charge, pulling your arms behind your back with a rope, putting a plastic bag over your head until you can't breathe, putting a hand on a candle or whatever, do not. The charge happens because you have released that you have at the moment of release from the pain, at the final moment, the terminator between a point of absolute agony and then the instant sense of relief. Live your life in that split second.